What is up, people? It's your boy Fishing. Time for an Ohio State preview. I'm going to go through the whole schedule, see what Ohio State lost, what they have coming back, take a look at the whole Big Ten. Now, of course, if you like the video, grab hit the like button. I do appreciate it. So Ohio State, obviously, they have C.J. Stroud coming back. C.J. Stroud threw for almost 5,000 yards last year. I think 47 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, a really good ratio. Travion Henderson coming back, rushed for 1,200 yards last year. Of course, they lose Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, both elite wide receivers to the NFL now. But they have pieces still at wide receiver. Jackson Smith-Njigba, um, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Ibuka. I mean, a extremely talented wide receiver room, probably one of the most in the country, most talented wide receiver rooms at Ohio State. The problem for Ohio State last year was the defense. Ohio State's defense was just god awful. So, and you got Tim Knowles coming in there, and hopefully he can make something happen. What he did at Oklahoma State is nothing short of amazing, especially with the talent he had. So, I don't think maybe it'll be this year, but I think in the coming years, maybe next year, that Ohio State defense can be elite. And that was the problem for them last year. That's why they had two losses to Oregon and Michigan, in my opinion, and almost lost to Utah in the bowl game. You can watch the Oregon game and the Michigan game, and you can really just see how the O line for both of those teams pushed Ohio State's defensive line around. Ohio State was just really a victim of getting the ball ran on them last year. And that you can see that in all three games, Utah, Oregon, and Michigan, is that was just the case. But let's take a look at the schedule, see if they can make the Big Ten championship, if they'll take any losses, see how they're looking this year. Now, game one, it's in Columbus. Notre Dame comes to town. Notre Dame is going to be a good team this year. Marcus Freeman's first game of his first year coaching there. Notre Dame's a good team. They have talent all over that roster. There's no reason to think Notre Dame won't be good. My problem is the secondary for Notre Dame and defensive backs. This is where it starts and ends with me. I just don't think that they can compete with Ohio State's elite wide receivers. And of course, Notre Dame plays really good lines of scrimmage. They have some of the best tight ends in the country a lot of times. Brian Kelly not there. It's going to be interesting to see how Marcus Freeman runs the offense. Of course, he was a defensive coordinator, so I think the defense will be fine. But I'm going to give Ohio State a win here just because of a few unknowns for Notre Dame and just Ohio State's elite wide receivers, which that'll be the case for a lot of teams this year, not being able to keep up with C.J. Stroud and the wide receivers for Ohio State. Next game is Arkansas State. I'm going to give it an automatic win. Next game, Toledo, automatic win. All three games have been at home. Then you got Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a really tricky one. They always play really good defense, and then the offense has been good. They like to play smash mouth, run the ball on you. Um, and when we watched Graham Mertz in the COVID year, we were kind of thinking maybe they actually have a quarterback that can throw the ball. Not really the case so much. Wisconsin, pretty much offense has been non-existent. And you think back to times where they had Jonathan Taylor, really elite running backs. I don't know if they have an elite running back there, but they do run the ball pretty well. But Wisconsin just not very good team, and I don't see any reason to believe they'll be very good this year. I'm giving Ohio State the win. Then you got Rutgers. This is another home game. You're starting out with 5 home games for Ohio State, but Rutgers is Rutgers. Greg Schiano really trying to turn it around there, but no talent there, so hard to see any them putting up a fight for any reason at all. So Ohio State 5-0. And then you have Michigan State. Now, obviously, Michigan State had Kenneth Walker last year, and it was really the Kenneth Walker show. I mean, uh, their secondary is probably the worst in the Big Ten and maybe even in the country. Purdue threw for 500 yards on Michigan State last year. I mean, they're just really bad, and so obviously, I think Ohio State's going to do the same. Now, Peyton Thorne, the quarterback, and Jalen Reed, the wide receiver, are a really good duo. They both come back. Peyton Thorne a little bit underrated, but I do like him as a quarterback. But Jalen Reed is an elite wide receiver to me, so I think they'll be able to put points up. But just assuming they're not going to have a run game this year, I find it really hard to believe that Michigan State's going to keep up to the status that they were last year. I think they take a step back. Then you got Iowa, and well, you got a bye week, and then you play Iowa in Columbus. Iowa's a tricky team too. I mean, they're always a solid team all around, but and they like to play, takeaways, fumbles. They had 25 interceptions last year, just a ton. But Spencer Pritchard is just not it for them. He had 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I mean, he made some plays last year, but if you watched, but 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, I think like 2,100 yards. I mean, he just wasn't very good. And that's the problem with Iowa. Kind of like Wisconsin, offense kind of non existent unless it's a running back. But Yeah, Ohio State getting the win there. And then you got to go to Penn State. Now, this can be a really tricky one. You got to go to Penn State. Penn State has Sean Clifford coming back. They lose Jahan Dotson and Noah Cain to the transfer portal. Jahan Dotson, of course, wide receiver. Noah Cain, the running back, went to LSU, transferred. Um, Penn State gets Nick Singleton, the number one running back in the country recruit. He's going to be a freshman. We'll see what he can do there. Penn State always has a really good defense. My problem with Penn State is I think they averaged 27, 24 points a game last year. Just no offensive production as far as, um, just scoring ability. So I'm giving the win to Ohio State again. This could be a tricky game. This could be the whiteout. Probably will be for Penn State. It's at home for them. So it could be tricky, but I think it kind of reverts back to how it's always been. Ohio State pretty much just beats Penn State by about 10 points almost every year. So another win there. And then you go to Northwestern. Northwestern, they take a few years break, and then out of the blue, they have a 9-10 win season. I don't think it'll be this year. I think Ohio State kills Northwestern. I don't see a problem there. Then you got Indiana in Columbus. What happened to Indiana 2 years ago? Michael Penix just never turned out to be what they wanted. They thought he could be. They had that wide receiver that was really good, and he went to the NFL, and it just all fell apart. Indiana hasn't been very good. High expectations after that year, and it just hasn't shown. Indiana's going to take a loss here. And then you got Maryland. You got to go to Maryland. Now, this one here, obviously Maryland has Talia Tagovailoa, however you say it, Tua's little brother. If you watched any of the games last year that Maryland played, he lit a lot of teams up. He's a very underrated quarterback, and I'm really high on that kid. He is a good quarterback. Maryland gets Jacob Copeland, transfer from Florida, Florida's best receiver, and he is really, really good. I think Maryland's going to have a really good offense this year. Now, the defense, Maryland gave up an exuberant amount of points last year to a lot of teams, and it was pretty bad. I'm not going to lie, and I think it probably won't get too much better. But I'm going to pick this game to be the upset. I think Maryland is probably the only team on this schedule that can keep up scoring with Ohio State. Not saying it's going to happen. This is just my pick, but I'm picking Maryland to upset Ohio State, and I think that'll be their one loss. Ohio State always slips up one game of the season, whoever it may be. Obviously, last year it was Oregon and Michigan, but you think back to when Purdue beat them out of nowhere, and Purdue wasn't a good team. So I think that'll be Maryland this year. And then you got last game of the year at home against Michigan. Now, Michigan, obviously, they lose a lot of defensive players last year. Aiden Hutchinson, Ajabo. They lose Hassan Haskins at running back. But Michigan's got Cade McNamara coming back, J.J. McCarthy coming back, both quarterbacks, and Blake Corum coming back. I think Michigan will still be a solid team. But kind of like Penn State, I think it just reverts back to how it's been in the past years. I think 9-3, 10-2 team Michigan could be. But I will say this: if Michigan can play J.J. McCarthy and actually learn how to throw the ball, Michigan could be a problem for a lot of teams this year. And if he'd end up starting and he's playing elite quarterback play. I could have a different outlook about this game. But like I said, and Michigan's got talent at the wide receiver. Ronnie Bell coming off injury. Anyway, like I said, I think Michigan 9-3, 10-2. I think Ohio State wins this game too. So I got Ohio State 11-1 going to the Big Ten championship. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think Maryland doesn't beat them? Do you think another team beats Ohio State? Do you think Ohio State goes undefeated? Leave me your comments down below. Expectations for CJ Stroud, whatever you want to say about Ohio State. But yeah, I appreciate y'all watching, and deuces.